As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus.
Siri, is the Earth a ball?
A ball? Heavens no. How could you live on a ball? That doesn't seem possible. The Earth is clearly flat.
The space shuttle was one of the greatest achievements of the 1980s. No. It's an achievement, but only in being a great and complex way to fake space. As a child who loved science, physics in particular, I had a special interest in the space shuttle, which I thought was really awesome. But for as much as they say it's inspiring, I have to say that it didn't really inspire anything in me but a lingering doubt that only ever grew. Only now, have I totally figured out how they faked it. And I'm offering it up to you just out of the goodness of my heart, because I'm an honest person who doesn't lie to you like NASA. I'm not above lying under any circumstances. I'm not a perfect person. But NASA as an entity is an evil snake. So how did they do it? Well, they had 4 versions of the space shuttle that you see here. And we're going to break it down. We're going to start with the heavy media prototype. I call it that because it is heavy. If you look at it being constructed here, it's made very carefully by hard-working people who think that they're actually doing something of value. They don't know that they're fucking space. They're not in the conspiracy. They faithfully build a launch vehicle that they believe has the necessary specifications and components to help these very loyal and courageous people, these astronauts, survive a trip to space and accomplish their very important mission, whatever the heck that is. Well, the heavy media prototype was a full-sized vehicle. Like I said, it had components built by subcontractors who are many which well-meaning. It contained realistic rockets, although they didn't really work, not the way that they were designed. The interior was identical to a parabolic plane, which we will briefly discuss later. And it was there so that reporters and photographers would have access before the first launch. After the first launch, they didn't really have access. Now, the vehicle was built after this, in my opinion, the Gulfstream II. Why did NASA have such interest in the Gulfstream II? Well, the Gulfstream II was about the right size, right shape, and it had the engines in the right place to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish with the space shuttle. The sketch design for the space shuttle had roughly the same dimensions. If you take a Gulfstream II and look at the engines, you can see how they're mounted on the fuselage. There are 2 of them, and they're placed just about right where the space shuttle engines would be placed. The big difference is they widened it. We'll talk about that later, maybe. The number 2, the second vehicle, is the one that you see at launch. So this is not the heavy prototype that the media got to see. Now it's switched. Now it's a completely different vehicle. This vehicle is not designed with any seats in it. It's unmanned. It has a simple set of mission parameters, and they are as follows. Launch at a slight tilted angle. and then do what they call the roll program. It's very important. It rolls upside down right away so that it begins to level off in its flight well below, in my opinion, 50,000 feet. Why? Because it's on its way back down. Soon it angles downward, and it has a prescribed oceanic ditching maneuver that it already starts within view. It happens, however, out of view, about 90 miles downrange. Where? In the ocean, where they have restricted travel. It also happens to be part of the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe that explains some unfortunate disappearances of people who perhaps saw something they're not supposed to see. So, what is it made of? Well, I think it's a combination of vinyl and some kind of metal, probably aluminum, as an outer skin. And the vehicle is light, it's hollow. The boosters are wall materials made out of the same type of thing because it holds helium. Much like an inflatable bounce house, it holds its shape thanks to a constant influx of air. However, closer to launch, if you recall seeing all this ice and all this frost right before launch, it's because they are pumping in a lot of noble gas that's lighter than air, probably helium, and the expansion is very, very cold. The tank, ironically, is the lightest. It's lighter than air. It's the lightest component of all, and that's why it goes immediately to the top during the so-called roll program. If you look at the shuttle just prior to launch, especially in the early days, the early launches, it has that kind of hot air balloon bounce house look to it. I think they decided to make that center tank orange and give it this ugly striped rib chute or tube that goes down the side that it didn't have before, just to make it look more mechanical and metallic. The launch vehicle is held by some kind of an air bladder to pinch the bottom and hold on to it. There are some interesting shots of the launch. You can see the use of orange lights. You can see the use of steam. And, well, let's move on with some other characteristics of the launch vehicle itself. In order that it doesn't fly away too early, which would be just game over, dead giveaway, not only do they have it pinched with those air bladders on the wings, but they also have it filled with water to act as ballast. And so I believe the helium is a backfill to the water that escapes just prior to launch. The water acts also as a heat sink so that the vinyl doesn't burn up from the actual rockets in the jet engine, or the propane flamed jet engine. So it would be fire control. So the jets are masquerading as rockets. And the propane has been shown. You can tell it's just streaming out of nozzles on the rim or the ring around the outside part of the cone during launch. The rocket engines on the shuttle, for sure, and maybe also the booster rockets, are otherwise regular engines and probably of the same type, the Rolls-Royce ones that are used on the Gulfstream, although they may just be different, like F-16 engines or something of that sort. Nobody's allowed near the launch, as it probably becomes quite obvious when you get close enough to this particular vehicle, the second vehicle, which is the launch vehicle. You'll start to see some things that just don't match up and don't look right. As reported and experienced, yes, the launches are very, very loud, but it's a non sequitur to think that the loudness of the launch also indicates the factual nature of the launch, because noise can be made by different things than what you're seeing. A noise can be made by something other than what you are looking at, thinking that the noise is made. It's basic ventriloquism. And such a trick as ventriloquism is exactly the kind of special practical effects that NASA is actually really good at least in terms of pulling off to defraud the public, which included me, but not anymore. And it's pretty easy to pick it apart if you just research their own material and find things like this.
The first thing they installed was a huge loudspeaker, through which they played white noise to simulate the sound of a rocket. They then sent a number of trucks in different directions out into the wilderness, and the drivers were ordered to stop when the noise levels became acceptable. This gave them an imaginary boundary line, and anyone living on the inside of it was offered a simple choice. Stay, and you'll never hear another television program as long as you live. Or take the NASA shilling and get out.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
No one stayed, and NASA ended up with exactly what it wanted. 125,000 acres of nothing. They even had to move 5 cemeteries.
If anything about that sounded right to you, and if you are not completely infuriated by what NASA did there, then please don't watch any of my videos and get out. All right, moving on, since you stayed. The last thing with the launch vehicle that I think is worth mentioning is that the astronauts don't get on. It's unmanned. How do they not get on? Well, they make a big show about getting on, but they don't. They climb through this little yellow brick road, they call it. And it's interesting that for an open air type thing that's a public show, you'd want to be able to see them walking on, and you can because you can see their upper bodies walking on. But then, like the snakes that they are, they get on their bellies and they crawl. It's poetic justice that these cowards crawl on their bellies along this yellow brick road to go down a tunnel, like going down to hell. They go down and they go down where the fire is going to be. Well, it's fake fire in this case, as the shuttle goes up. It's still hot though, it's steam. So yeah, they do go underground. But that's how the Challenger crew survived. Challenger crew survived the so-called disaster. So let's review, class. If the shuttle had these retro rockets on the nose that you see here, which are black and they're cavitations where the jets blow out, on the launch pad, would it be like a bounce house? Would it be white? Would it be vinyl? No. The answer is no. And then if you zoom in on the launch when it has the booster separation, would you see them popping like helium balloons with the helium gas escaping and immediately rising? And it expands because it goes to lower pressure, so the water and the air condenses into vapor, and they fall not because they are heavy metal things with liquid rocket fuel or solid rocket fuel. No, they fall because the helium is out of the balloon. It's just right there in photographic evidence. The third type is the tabletop studio model. That's how they faked footage of the in-orbit scenes. It's miniature in scale. They used it in the studio to make live video recordings, stop motion, and later on in the program some green screen footage. They used it to portray satellite launches. And as evidence, you can see in many different recordings there's evidence of strings, but my favorite is the infamous giant head blunder that they made. It's really a good find, and it's out of their footage. They didn't catch it.
He said this is a picture, the astronaut said this is a picture from being deployed from the spacecraft. Let's have a listen.
Actually being deployed.
Now why am I mentioning this?
You know, there were very few vibrations of any sort. This is a picture of the inside.
That's impossible!
Incredible. I've never seen anything like it. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Could it be an optical illusion?
What?
This is a picture of the inset. So do you see, watch what's over here, and this will give it away for you, okay, if you didn't see it already.
Actually being deployed from the spacecraft. The deployment
come
very slowly. At the moment
So fourth and finally, we have the landing plane. I believe they chemtrail the skies just sometimes different reason. One, to pollute and obfuscate the view so that you can't see that the jet flies from like Area 51 or someplace, rises up, and it goes up and over Texas and comes in and lands at the Kennedy Space Center. It's not a glider. It has an engine. It's got two Rolls-Royce engines from the Gulfstream. It's a dual-engine one-seater with the outboard Rolls-Royce engines, specially developed for the Gulfstream 3. It was available, but it was already available to NASA before that because they paid for the development to have that Gulfstream Rolls-Royce engine specially made with a muffler to be extra, extra quiet. I wonder why. I think I know. So it's got the black mesh that hides the air intakes only on the landing vehicle. They have black tiles there. Why would they have those black tiles there? Just to have something black that's there. They figured this out in later vehicles because it's supposed to make you think that they just have black tiles there, when in fact it's hiding the fact that when it lands it has active jet engines. The Rolls-Royce outboard 2 jet engines. So it lands. I have it on good authority. It's a empty shell. It's a one-seater, and it's not a glider. It's powered. And then fifth, there's a parabolic plane that's located at a military base, and they have 90-second clips that are evidence of when they're using the parabolic dives to simulate zero-G prior to their chroma key 3D green screen work that they do nowadays. Back then, they did more of the practical effects, like your traditional magic tricks, like Penn and Teller, upside down, hanging upside down with the camera, right, or upside down as well, and, or right side up, doesn't matter. Things like that, strings and whatnot. Just things to fool you. It was all just to fool you, to fake space, to get money, to make it seem like the Earth is a globe, to make it seem like the Bible isn't true and God doesn't exist, to make it seem like you are insignificant in a vast universe, to make it seem like Satan's world, Satan's ways are the only and best ways for you. And in fact, they hid what they knew at the upper levels, but now at the lower levels we are learning that indeed all those times you thought the Bible was wrong, you thought that the Earth was a globe, it was flat the whole time. There's a dome over your head. It's just how it says in the Bible. God does exist. He loves you, cares about you, and wants the best for you. And being lied to and believing it is not what's best for you. That's why I'm sharing with you how they faked the space shuttle program. And now you know. What you do with it is your own business. And don't try to tell me that it's not fake, because once you realize and accept the fact that this stuff is fake, there's no going back from that. When you see the fakery of it, it just keeps piling up, and there's no turning back. I'm not married to the globe. I don't care, and I don't think there's a globe, and I'm happy about that. I'd rather live in God's world with purpose and meaning and significance than a world of evolution, fake space, death, disease, decay, and all that horse manure that I don't like. I don't believe in it. I believe in life. I believe in everlasting life. I believe in joy. I believe in happiness. I believe in purpose. And I believe the Bible. The Bible has been right this whole time. It's completely vindicated. And that, my friends, is an encouraging thought.
Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in to Truth TV News. I'm Vincent Rhodes, your host, and I wanted to talk to you about the sky stone, the blue, beautiful stone that was discovered in 1990, and it is called the sky stone, the stone of God. Actually, this stone here was found in Africa. However, there have been reports of it being found in Indonesia and all over different places. Here's the story behind it. Legend has it that this stone actually came from heaven. It is God's stone. It is part of the firmament that is above the earth, and this firmament, again, is a dome that is over the earth. When God said in Genesis chapter 1, excuse me, God said in Genesis chapter 1 that, he was going to separate the waters from the waters. And he took a firmament and put it up in the sky, fixed it up above us. And this firmament now rests up above us, keeping the waters that are above the firmament from in coming down into the earth realm. And so up above us, there is a blue kind of firmament that is above us right now. And it is actually composed of this material here that fell from the sky. Now, the legend associated with this is that God became angry with some of the angels in heaven and threw them down to the earth here, and they are now dwelling down here. And when he did that, they burst through the firmament because he cast them down. Now, this is just legend, and let's see if I can even find the legend here. Found that information on this website here about Skystone. And it says here that this stone has been analyzed by many people, many legitimate scientists, and the legitimate scientists cannot determine what the origin of the stone or the gem is. And so it's an unclassified substance, according to, again, the most reputable institutions of science. So this stone is known of all over the world and is a stone that legitimately presents a problem for scientists who would like to deny the creation story, and also people who would like to deny that the earth is flat and that we live up under a dome. And so we do know now that we do live up under the dome. There's just so much evidence coming out about it that the earth is flat and that we are living surrounded by an ice wall in the middle of the earth. All you have to do is just do water. Does water really stick to a ball? No, water does not stick to a ball. It never has and never will. As a matter of fact, it would take more faith to believe that water actually sticks to a ball and upside down than it does to believe in God. So I don't know why people are trying not to believe in God. Now, the scripture also confirms this when we talk about the story of Ezekiel. And Ezekiel, let's see if I can get that. Okay, so we have Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 26. It says, "And above the firmament was over their heads the likeness of a throne." Now, this is an image or a vision that God has given to Ezekiel, the prophet of the Old Testament, to show him that there is a firmament over the earth. And this happened after the flood. So Ezekiel is still seeing the firmament above us, and there is a firmament. Now, I want you to notice the color of the firmament. It says the appearance of the color of the firmament was like sapphire stone. Now, sapphire stone is a colorful stone that looks like blue. It's a blue stone, and that's what sapphire actually looks like. Let's see if I can get some sapphire up for you. Okay, let's take a look at some of the sapphire jewelry that we can find here. There. Now, that's the picture of what sapphire jewelry actually looks like. It's a blue stone. when Ezekiel saw this vision of the firmament. The firmament was blue. The interesting thing about this sky stone is that this sky stone is actually the same color as the firmament. And now here's another thing that you need to know about this sky stone. This sky stone, when it's cut and when it's broken down into parts to be analyzed, disappears right before their eyes, or they can't keep it because it's made of 77% oxygen. Now go figure. We used to think that oxygen, and that's what we were told in school, and this is what I was told in my textbooks, that oxygen came from plants, and I believe that they do. But up above us there is a firmament that abundantly supplies oxygen for us to live on, and so this oxygenated environment that we live in is actually being emanated or given to us from this supply, this abundant supply that's over our heads, called the firmament. It is a sky. It is part of the sky. So I don't know whether or not the person who was into folklore thought this would be funny. Maybe he believed in the firmament, but you remember the story. The sky is falling. Well, truly the sky has fallen in many places all over this particular earth. And what we need to be aware of is that God is real, that, it's just like it says in the Bible, that God placed a firmament above us. Let me see if I can get that for you. All right, in Genesis chapter 1, verse, let's see where we can find it. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 7, and God made a firmament. A firmament. That's what the Bible says. Now, are you going to believe science or are you going to believe the Bible? I'm just telling you because, again, you can't believe both of them. God made a firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And so, again, we know that as we read these scriptures, that there is a conflict going on between science and between God. But I'm going to tell you, let God be true and every man a liar. Well, until next time.
What? Thundercats!
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
The Eye of Thundera, a Thundercat's in danger. Sword of Omens, give me sight beyond sight. Beyond sight.
Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in to True TV News. I'm Vincent Rose, your host, and I saw this the other day about satellites in my feed on Google Plus. And, I sometimes post things that I wanted to comment about a little bit later on. And there are a couple of video clips in this that I want you to see, and just want to make a few comments about it.
But the rain did help. And we'll get a little bit more rain coming in late tonight. We got a system rolling by to our east, so the heavy rain stays in the south.
I literally had to fly in from outer space. Thanks to a system of satellites, natural disasters have become a thing of the past. We can control our weather.
Because, again, we know that we do live in a fake reality in which the controllers and handlers they control what we know and what we see. Now, we've been told over and over again that satellites are real, and that all the time that when they're sending these rockets up in space, that these rockets are actually going up there to put these little bitty small boxes in the sky so that they can help us to communicate and help us to do a number of other grand things, you know, in this age of technology. But would it surprise you to hear me say that satellites are not real, because it's impossible for anything to exist in orbit, and that satellites were created out of the mind of a science fiction writer who created the illusion that satellites were real based upon the theory of gravity, which is now collapsed among this flat Earth, because we do know that weight and density and gravity all are terms that they use interchangeably at will in order to throw us off the trail that gravity does not exist. And so, you know, you might be even shocked if you're new to flat Earth to even hear me say that. But I want you to consider the satellites. Satellites do not actually exist. They are something of a enigma, a figment of man's imagination. Again, it's something that was created by a science fiction writer, and so I'm going to play a couple of clips to convince you that satellites are not real.
Russia be planning an attack on undersea cables that connect global internet.
Russian ships and submarines working near undersea cables that carry almost all of the...
Google and Facebook join forces on undersea data cable. The network of deep-sea Pacific Rim cables that help connect the web and keep it global is about to get bigger, with a little help from Google and Facebook. The deep-sea Pacific Light Cable Network will stretch across the Pacific Ocean between Hong Kong and Los Angeles.
Senior foreign affairs correspondent and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan is with us from Washington. Margaret, good morning. You've seen, of course, what the State Department has said. Do you think there'll be further retaliation?
Yes, the UK and the United States insist that the expulsions of these Russian nationals is not the only kind of retaliation. They're talking about sanctions, they're talking about travel restrictions, and even cyber actions.
Okay, so this is a section here in the Business Insider that shows the incredible map, shows the undersea cables that keep the internet alive, and security services are worried Russia could cut them. And so this was in the Business Insider, and it's really a current diplomatic debate, or something that they constantly talk about on TV, and it seems to be escalating with all of the hubbub about Russia on TV right now. So here's a drawing of the cable network that now exists under the water. And you can see that it's quite elaborate. Where are all of these satellites? I thought we had satellites. What's going on here? So this is really proof, people, that you know, we live in a fake world with a lot of information that is hidden from us. But really, it's real. If you just open your eyes, it's in plain sight.
We never stop hearing about how the internet's in the cloud, but really, it's in the ocean. About 300 undersea fiber optic cables are responsible for 99% of international data traffic.
What?
It's basically the same way we connect to each other in a single country, except underwater instead of underground.
What?
Ships lower a plow that digs a tiny groove in the ocean floor, lay in the cable, and it's naturally buried by sand, thanks to the ocean's current.
The backbone of TE Subcom's Marine Solutions is the industry's newest fleet of cable ships, the largest wholly owned fleet in the business, equipped with the most advanced installation tools. Powerful sea plows bury cable anywhere from 1 to 3 meters below seabed.
We're in the plow control van. It's built for simultaneous cable laying and burial. So as we're laying the cable, the plow is scooping the cable up, is opening up a small trench in the seabed, and then backfilling some soil over the top of the cable.
And you think it has to be cutting edge, and it is, but it's also been going on for 157 years.
All right, so here are all these newspaper articles here that clearly show that there is no such thing as satellites, at least from their perspective here on the Hill. And so just looking at this article here, it starts out talking about the threat of Russia, the threat of them cutting undersea cables. And this continues to be a big problem between the United States and Russia, because apparently they will there's a danger of Russia actively tracking underwater fiber optic cables and cutting them. And so again, the threat to the undersea cable is multifaceted, and this is something that Russia has been doing. I don't know whether it's just war games. Of course, they're all controlled by the same group of people, but United States and Russia keep these things going on to keep the Hegelian dialectic alive, to create a problem, then solution, and then synthesis. And so this is what they're trying to do here. And so here's another article. I think this one comes out of Europe, talks about Russia submarines are prowling around the vital undersea cables. It's making the NATO very nervous. So there you have it there. And again, if we would go back to the search window, there'd be many articles about this. Could Russia cut the undersea cables by the BBC? And then Japanese time, Japan. Could Russia sabotage undersea cable of the world? And so this is one of the big things that they're concerned about, because they know that we do not, how do I put it? We do not have satellites in the air to help with communication. They don't, from what they're saying, they're not really telling us the whole truth, but they are saying that 99% of communication come from undersea cables, and have always came from undersea cables. And this network of cables is very vital to the world economy, and keeping things going without a problem. So this Russian here says Russia's ships could cause catastrophe for the West by just cutting the cables. And so again, you saw some videos on it, and you've seen some articles on it. Maybe you can get on it and research it yourself.
Sword of omens, give me sight beyond sight.
What would you do? What would any of you be willing to do? Would you brave the weird and haunted shores at world's end?
Yeah, those mountains. That's it.
Do you see what's out there?
Yes.
If you tell me we'll make it, I'll believe you.
We'll make it. We have to. Welcome.
Now I just want to stand on top of the wall and piss off the edge of the world.
Sword of omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Siri, is the Earth a ball? A ball? Heavens no. How could you live on a ball? That doesn't seem possible. The Earth is clearly flat.
Hello, fellow flat earthers. I wanted to show you a book I picked up at a local secondhand bookstore yesterday. This is a Hammond's Contemporary World Atlas. This is copyright 1971. You flip past the first few pages, which are the table of contents and the area, population, some basic stats. Third page right there. It's pretty much the only alternate map that they have in this, aside from the individual maps of each country and breaking it down by state and all that fun stuff that you'd expect to see. This is your classic flat earth map. They call it a polar projection. This map has been prepared with the North Pole as the mathematical center. From it, distances to any part of the world may be measured. On Mercator's map of the world, the polar regions are so scattered that their relatively small area and availability for flight routes are disregarded. Today, with airplanes following great circle courses, often within the Arctic Circle, polar projection maps are indispensable to the people of this air-minded age. So I found that pretty interesting, the great circle courses. So this is really intended for pilots, right? That's what is implied. I just wanted to show you.
What?
Hey Kevin, I got a quick question for you. When you're up really high, what's the furthest that you've been able to see, like as far as a city or mountain range or anything that you could recognize after you've been up there for a while?
100 miles?
Oh yeah? Yeah.
Maybe?
Wow.
Like, I mean, it has to be something pretty distinguishable, like mountains.
Yeah.
So, like, you could probably see the Rockies from Kansas.
What?
Wow.
But nearing the border.
The Rockies from Kansas, that seems like more than 100 miles.
Well, nearing the border from Kansas into or Nebraska, the very western edge of it. But while you're still in it, if it's a clear day, but if it's smoky or hazy, obviously we can't see much, but it's not that easy to see with the naked eye. Yeah, unless it's like a very distinguishing feature, you know?
Yeah.
Or a coastline with lights at night.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What?
100 miles.
Yeah, about that, I'd say.
Wow. And let's see. I was told that the flights, you might not know this because you don't program them, but the flight simulators are programmed for a flat surface that you're flying over. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but the visuals do look pretty flat. Yeah.
Have you noticed that it looks the same when you get up in the sky?
Yeah,
as
they
the
do
flight
that
simulators?
they do that because it's actually kind of like pilots typically don't get motion sickness, but if there's ever going to be a time that we get motion sickness, it's in the simulator.
Oh, really?
Because of the visuals.
Yeah.
Because the visuals are still kind of a video game and computer-like, so they're not necessarily exactly, lining up with what you're feeling, sensory-wise. And so since the visuals are artificial and the simulator is mimicking real motion, it kind of messes us up. So you can't have the visuals. I mean, if they improve, that would be great, but they are what they are, even in the most advanced simulators, because we have some of the most advanced simulators and they're still kind of like,
Yeah. So how have they taught you guys to account for the ground moving underneath you when the plane's coming in at, from different directions. Like if
Like in the real plane?
Well, if the Earth is moving from side to side, but you happen to be landing on a strip going north.
But the wind is going like east to west?
Well, not the wind, the movement of the ground underneath you.
The ground isn't moving that much when you're traveling at the speed of, we landed about 143 knots, so that's quite fast. So the movement of the Earth it's not negligible. It's basically standing still as compared to our motion at that moment.
That's your experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they tell us, that at least in the U.S., the ground's moving at about 700 miles an hour left to right. And I was thinking that's kind of odd if you're landing, going north, or moving in the north direction.
That's not, no. The ground looks to us like it's standing still.
Yeah, not an issue, huh?
Yeah, no.
Well, thank you for your time.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Sword of Omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown.
Hey everybody, what's happening up in this piece? ODD TV is in the building! So let's talk a little more about this Buzz Aldrin clip where he subtly admitted that we didn't go to the moon. I've been getting a lot of comments on my last upload of that very clip. People say he was only talking about how we didn't go back to the moon. Let's run the clip.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
What? Thundercats!
That's my question. I want to know.
President Richard Nixon called Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin from the White House to congratulate them.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here.
Meanwhile, I can't get cell phone service in the mountains here in Colorado. Later on in the same year, Apollo 12 lands men on the moon for the second time. Then in 1971, both Apollo 14 and 15 successfully land men on the moon. In 1972, both Apollo 16 and 17 also successfully land men on the moon. So that's 6 successful moon landings between 1969 and 1972. And it just suddenly stops there. In 1981, Masonic Television, aka MTV, begins, starting right off with the usage of Apollo footage and continuing to use the Apollo program as their theme to further condition the masses on a wide scale, especially the younger generation. Make the Apollo missions cool and hip. Apollo missions, they're the hip thing to do. If MTV wasn't ran out of a Masonic temple, it wouldn't be such a dead giveaway, but they do, and it so happens that many NASA astronauts and employees are Freemasons. Now it's 2018, and nothing has happened since 1972. It's been just over 45 years, and that's a lot of time to be stagnant after 6 back-to-back moon landings. Get this, not only did NASA lose the telemetry data for all the moon landings, but NASA now claims that they lost the technology that got them to the moon in the first place.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is...
That's my question. I want to know.
We don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
What? That's my question. I want to know.
We don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology. And it's a painful process to build it back again.
That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know.
This is why we can't go past low Earth orbit, according to them.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on space station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
And this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
But I have a hunch as to why we can't leave low Earth orbit. Dome, 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 dome. Dome, 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 dome. Yeah, so they have conceived this idea of a layer of radiation that acts as an impenetrable barrier. It's called the Van Allen radiation belt, and it's code for the firmament. Another thing is that this radiation belt was present for the Apollo missions, so how did they manage to make it through? Let's ask Apollo astronaut Alan Bain.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt. And if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. How thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt? And so then we build it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Bullshit alert. Bullshit alert.
The Earth. We went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
So you see, Team Apollo didn't know about this deadly radiation belt that would have killed them, so they weren't affected by it. Another interesting aspect of space travel is that it's not possible because thrust and combustion are not viable in a vacuum. Let's review a couple of experiments in a vacuum chamber that prove what I am talking about. First experiment, thrust in a vacuum.
You see when I turn the fan on, it blows the feather all over the place. This is of course at atmospheric pressure right now. So since we're at Martian air pressure, let's unplug the vacuum pump and let's turn on this fan. Place your bets as to what's going to happen to this feather. Now the fan's only going to produce maybe 10 miles per hour worth of wind. On the surface of Mars, the fastest recorded wind speed is about 70 miles an hour. But let's say the superstorm in the Martian had wind speeds of 200 miles an hour, 20 times what we have here. To compensate for that, I imagine the feather is about 20 times easier to push over than a spaceship. So let's see what happens. Okay, fans on. And the feather's not moving. In fact, let's zoom in on that.
Thrust does not work in a vacuum, and thrust would be needed to traverse outer space. Second experiment, combustion in a vacuum.
This is a mixture of sugar, potassium nitrate, and iron oxide. This is used in amateur rockets because the ingredients are readily available and the amount of thrust it produces is quite high. So let's light this on fire and see how it does. So this is in Earth atmosphere. As you can see, it burns rather rapidly, producing a little bit of thrust even. As you can see towards the end, it moved it around. So now let's try it inside of a vacuum. No ignition. That's interesting.
Combustion does not work in a vacuum. This is a very big deal. Space travel falls on its face and breaks it, then dies with these two vacuum chamber experiments. Thanks, Cody's Lab. Out.
Trouble in space this morning as the International Space Crew attempted a spacewalk outside the station. Here's a live look at the astronauts.
What?
Well, I don't believe. I don't think that's. Yeah,
Where's their spacesuit?
My question is, through your career and your writing and your acting, you've inspired so many people to enter the sciences. How do you balance science with science fiction?
They're both the same.
What? Sword of Omens, give me sight beyond sight.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay, and with all the solar winds.
She always loved the pictures.
It's an old federal textbook. We've replaced them with the corrected versions.
Corrected.
Explaining how the Apollo missions were fake.
Folks, it's an honor for me to be working in this studio. This is the very sound stage where we faked the moon landing. And the JFK assassination. No, I'm sorry, this is where we planned the JFK assassination.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
Evolution isn't the only thing we are being lied to about. The Earth under our feet has been molded into a spinning ball that is a byproduct of the Big Bang, which is a theory that was introduced to science in 1931. In order for the theory of evolution to be reasonable, the Big Bang that was somehow pinpointed to 13.7 billion years ago has to be true. In the Big Bang cosmology, the Earth is a rotating sphere orbiting around the Sun. The issue is that the motion of the Earth has never been detected, and here we are in the year 2016 looking for the curvature of our world, which also can't seem to be measured. Mainstream science using theory after problematic theory to try and prove another theory isn't science at all. Real science will reveal a stationary Earth that's turning out to be quite flat, with a sun that's much closer than we are told. Despite what you hear, flat earthers aren't anti-science at all. We just don't condone what mainstream science has become, and that's a faith-based religion swarming with lies and ludicrous theories that have never been proven. Also, this re-emergence of the flat earth has little to do with the Flat Earth Society. If you have the desire to further look into this, don't check for answers on their website. Some of the claims made by the Flat Earth Society are decent, while others are absurd. This is a common ploy to encourage no further investigation by the controlled opposition known as the Flat Earth Society.
It's a commonly held misconception that the Earth is a spherical object that revolves around the Sun. But the fact is, of course, that the Earth is a circular dish surrounded by a barrier of ice that explorers have been attempting to penetrate for centuries.
What if gravity isn't real? What if the Earth is in fact flat and science has been wrong all along?
Everything that you've been taught is a lie.
We're shown that and told that's the solar system, that's the way it works. You've got the big sun in the middle and all the planets revolve around it, but nobody's ever seen that. We've never seen a photograph of it. We've never seen real part. We've certainly never seen any animation of it, even though there's supposed to be a probe out in Pluto at the moment. Nobody's ever seen the solar system like this. It's always graphics, it's always secondary knowledge.
Things that people hold dear and call fact, like gravity, like the age of the universe formation itself, the age of the Earth, they're all dependent on things that are unproven. While they're good to consider, we should consider everything. You have allowed them to become facts that appear in our textbooks taught by professors to kids as facts.
The argument, for all practical purposes, came to an end when the Church of England was established by law during the 16th century. They embraced many radical scientific notions prevalent at the time, including Copernicus' round Earth theory. With this endorsement, the theory found its way into the schools, which were then largely controlled by the Church. It has remained there to this day, and many children have accepted it without question.
All-seeing eye and the square of compasses. Here we have Buzz Aldrin, the second man, supposedly that walked on the grey dust of Kubrick's film set, showing off. They don't try and hide it, it's amazing. There's his Masonic ring, he's got his Shriner hat there. And these guys, yeah, they're supposedly praying to the command module. Looks like a pyramid to me. The connections between Ron L. Hubbard, or L. Ron Hubbard, who started the Scientology movement, Walt Disney, Werner von Braun, rocket scientist, Jack Parsons, also a rocket scientist, Jet Propulsion's laboratory, and Aleister Crowley, who's obviously an art Satanist, influenced a lot of rock music and everything else. Started the OTO, the Ordo Tempora Orientis. These guys are all connected. They're all in the same brotherhood. The connections between, well, here you go. Jack Parsons, the JPL was how obviously NASA got into the air in the first place, the Jet Propulsion's laboratory. Here's Jack Parsons at a Masonic ceremony. You can tell by the floor. And again, you can look into this for yourself. Yeah, it's easily searchable. It's easily researchable information. The connection between Walt Disney. Here we have aboard the ISS. Again, now we're getting into the handshakes. We've got Baphomet all doing it. Yeah, we've seen Bill Clinton do that, and Bush, and all these guys give you that. We know what that means. We know who they're in service to. This is all about occultism. It's all about sun worship, heliocentrism. It's not science. It's a religion. It's a faith. This is Helios. This is Helios, the sun god. And here he is on the badge of Apollo 13. This is all occult religion going all the way back through all Egypt and then back through to Babylon as well.
Life is much simpler on a flat plane. There's no complex theories or complicated mathematics involved in it. The flat plane. There's sea level is level. Everywhere you go at sea level it's sea level. There's no bending the ocean around a spinning ball. It's level. It's water finds its level and it maintains. You can't bend it around a ball.
This idea, these facts, they're facts, resonating with people all over the world is not an accident. It's not a coincidence. That is the hardest part for you guys to understand. The people that argue with me, that want to make me feel like a fucking idiot, that's not you talking. That's your ego talking. You have to convince yourself verbally to somebody who is challenging your own beliefs to make yourself feel better and to help you sleep at night. The flat earth is a perfect example of that. You refuse to look at the information. It's stupid. Well, why is it stupid? Well, it just is. Every little thing that you've brought up, all of you, can be refuted and explained differently, but you refuse to see that. You refuse to look at it. That makes you ignorant. That is the definition of ignorance.
So how does Hollywood brainwash you? Well, one way is like this. They begin their movies on a globe and then they zoom in to whatever the first scene is. Real clever way to brainwash you in the very first scene of any movie you see. Universal Studios is so bad they use this goddamn globe as their logo, as their intro to every single movie that they make. At the beginning of every single movie Universal makes, you're gonna see the spinning globe logo. So it doesn't even matter what the movie's about. You're gonna be brainwashed.
No video, real video of the real Earth spinning in space, which you'd all like to see, actually exists. This is what is shown. This is last year from the Discover satellite, the Epic camera. This is actually the dark side of the moon. Going past the Earth. There's the Earth spinning. And there's the dark side of the moon. The only problem with that is the moon's supposed to be orbiting the Earth, not just flying straight past it. Your eyes aren't fooled, yeah? You've got your own senses, trust your senses, this is clearly CGI, but you go to NASA's website and they will claim this was taken from 1 million miles away from Earth by the Discover satellite. You'll notice also that the clouds don't really move. I mean, they move across, but they don't change, don't swirl, they don't change direction. 5 hours, 3:50 to 8:45 is nearly 5 hours of time-lapse photography. Those clouds do not move at all.
You ever been mindfucked before?
We don't have a picture of our Earth, except for the nice composite fake images NASA gives you to make sure you keep believing you're in a ball and keep arguing on their behalf, keep fighting for them, keep telling people we went to the moon, simply because you can't let your mind think of the possibility that someone lied to you. The government lied to you. They can't lie. They're my government. Believe me, it's hard for all of us.
That's crazy. The government doesn't lie to people.
I was a huge Star Wars fan. Very, very disappointed to find out that I'm just being programmed. Again, it's a multi-pronged approach to show you they're not trying to pretend that Star Wars is real in any way, but again, it's impressing your brain again and again and again that the space and planets and spaceships and they're all round and everything else, okay? It's Hollywood. So now we've got the ISS. Does this look solid? Does this look like a solid machine to you? But how do we know these are real? We don't. But I tell you what you don't see from the ISS, which you really should and you never do, is one of the 17,000 satellites that are also supposed to be spinning around up there as well.
What difference does it make if it's a globe or if it's flat? They're stealing your money and showing you cartoons and CGI. Wouldn't that make a difference if it was a globe or if it was flat? Because they keep showing you cartoons of a globe. They show you CGI of a globe. They show you Hollywood trickery of a globe. They're stealing your fucking money. If it's flat, that begs the question, hey, what the hell have you been showing us this ball for all this time? What have you been doing with our money? Did you guys go to space? Is evolution actually real? Did you guys just make this shit up? See, these are the questions we need to be asking. There might be more land out there to be discovered. There might be a fucking firmament up there. We don't know. They've stolen our mind from us and stuck us on a cartoon ball.
We are being lied to, controlled, manipulated, stolen from, and I'm not going to stop speaking out.
There's a quote by Tesla. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. That's what happened with the globe theory. Everybody knew the world was flat until one day some guy came along and said, "Oh no, it's a ball. We're spinning through space. We're circling the sun." A lie is a lie, even if everybody believes it. And truth is truth, even if no one believes it.
Ptolemy refined a system with Earth at the center. For 1,500 years, Ptolemy's system was used as the basis of astronomy and calendars, and it worked quite well.
Copernicus hated that, and Copernicus set about to undo Ptolemy's greatest discovery.
While working at the request of Pope Leo X on improvements to the Julian calendar, Copernicus conceived what turned out to be the foundational idea of modernity itself. The idea that the Earth moved. Not all were persuaded by Copernicus, however. The greatest astronomer of the time, Tycho Brahe, developed a new geocentric model. The Earth occupies the center, the planets orbit the sun, and the sun orbits the Earth.
They basically stole our minds and enslaved us by showing us a picture of a ball. Said, here's what you live on, it's a ball. And then they show us a different picture of a ball. Here's a different picture of a ball. And everyone's just like, yeah, that's the same place. It doesn't matter if the colors of the continents change. It doesn't matter if the color of the oceans change. It doesn't matter if the continents change sizes, change locations.
Tycho hired a young assistant named Johannes Kepler in 1600. Kepler, working on his own development of the Copernican system, needed Tycho's observations, but Tycho refused to part with them. When Tycho died suddenly and mysteriously in 1601, Kepler took charge of Tycho's observations and used them to develop his own system. In Kepler's system, the sun is in the center, while the planets move on ellipses, non-uniformly. The ellipse, with its two foci, allows us to see that Ptolemy's epicycles and equant were actually a brilliant attempt to express non-uniform motion centuries before Kepler. Indeed, once the concept of non-uniform motion is introduced, all of these systems can be shown to be geometrically identical.
Copernicus was the main guy who started off the revolution. His book on the revolutions of the celestial spheres changed, thousands of years of thinking about the Earth being completely still, as you can experience it for yourself every single day of your life, and obviously the bodies move in the heavens above us. That's what your senses experience. Copernicus changed all that around, but he didn't use any science. There's no science in his book. He got his ideas from the Hermetica, from Hermes Trismegistus. And it basically says how the sun sits enthroned in the middle of the solar system, and we all orbit around it. What's that sound like to you? That sounds like sun worship. It sounds like sun cult to me. Because later on, I'm going to show you, Fred Hoyle was another astronomer royal. He said there's no difference in the mathematics, whether it's geocentric or heliocentric. The sun moves around the earth moves around the sun. The mass works the same, exactly the way. The connections between Copernicus, just from the imaging. Yeah, I wouldn't be, have a portrait done with a big 33 on it, or a triangle with an eye, or anything like that. I wouldn't want to be connected or associated with any of that stuff, because I'm not really into that kind of stuff. I'm working for the other side. But Copernicus obviously had no problem with the square and compass. Yeah, with the big wheel here, we've got the big sun wheel, and we've got the Mercury sign as well. Yeah, all leads back again. You can investigate that more for yourself. The Book of Thoth by Aleister Crowley, Freemasonry with the sun over the head. Yeah, as above, so below. Yeah, one of the reasons why Mercury, because it can rise in the morning and the night, so it's also hermaphroditic. Both sexes, which obviously is Baphomet as well, which we know as the breast and the penis. It goes on and on and on. It's all about cult sun worship. You can trace it back to Babylon. You can see all the different gods going through it, but there is no science to Copernicus's on the revolutions of the spheres. It's a philosophical tract, and it's all based on the Hermetica.
Up is up, down is down. If I a visual aid, I have a pin. If I release it from my grip, what happens? Anybody? Correct. It falls. Was that gravity? No. The molecules that make up this pin, the plastic, the ink, it's got a little rubber grip on it, are more dense than the molecules of the air surrounding it. The molecules of the air will not support the weight, so they fall. So it falls when you let go, like that. Density and mass make an object heavy. There's no gravity. Simple. Up is up, down is down. Objects fall because they're heavy. If it floats, it's lighter than air. Helium. Fill a balloon with helium, it goes up. If you filled it with hydrogen, it would also go up. Lighter than air, floats. Heavier than air, falls. It's not complicated.
Gravity is a god because it's the answer. It's the magic answer to everything. Why? How does the Earth keep us on, but it still spins around, it still orbits on gravity? How's the moon? How's the type of gravity? Why doesn't the moon fly off to the sun? Because the sun's got bigger gravity. It's the way gravity works. Don't worry about its gravity. Gravity is the god that explains everything very, very magically. There is no need for gravity whatsoever if we're on a fixed stationary plane and the heavenly bodies are simply going above us. The reason why you don't fall off is because you're denser than the air that underneath you. It's just, again, Occam's razor. It's a straightforward explanation.
Basically, the perspective of living on a globe is preposterous. It's ridiculous. It's hilarious how we are taught to perceive the world we live on, because basically, even when trying to depict it, it's hilarious. They have no way of depicting it without it being comical. You have whales climbing the curve, like, it's absurd. How can we live on a globe?
Core of the Earth, that you've seen the cutaway. This much is crust and mantle and magma and liquid molten stuff at the center. The deepest hole that's ever been drilled in the history of mankind to date, even with today's technology, 8 miles. If you want to say this is what the first 8 miles looks like, I will believe you, because they can show me the hole. This goes 8 miles down, okay? It goes 8 miles down. That's how thick is the plane that we live on? It's at least 8 miles, because they've drilled down that far. But they can't go any farther. It doesn't work. So it's speculation.
With a sphere of 4,000 miles radius being spun round once every 24 hours, a little bit of calculations will show that that person there is being spun round at about 1,000 miles an hour and it doesn't know it. I mean, this is obvious nonsense.
The stage was set for one of the most important events in the history of physics, the Michelson-Morley experiment. The experiment failed to detect the Earth moving in or against the ether. The problem was serious. Although various solutions were advanced, in the end, science was faced with a choice. Either discard the ether or admit that the Earth wasn't orbiting the Sun. It was Albert Einstein who came up with the solution, which now forms the basis of our physics and which we call the theory of relativity. Einstein eliminated the ether as the cause and said that it was simply a principle of nature. That when objects move through empty space, they contract in length, they decrease in the time traveled, and their mass increases, all by the same proportion. Hence, in order to maintain the Copernican principle, the length, time, and mass of moving objects were altered. And this is the essence of Einstein's special theory of relativity.
All of physics collapses with that experiment.
Foucault's pendulums do not uniformly swing in any one direction. Sometimes they rotate clockwise and sometimes counterclockwise. Sometimes they fail to rotate, and sometimes they rotate far too much. Scientists who have repeated variations of the experiment have conceded time and again that, quote, it was difficult to avoid giving the pendulum some slight lateral bias at starting. The behavior of the pendulum actually depends on 1. the initial force beginning its swing, and 2. the ball and socket joint used, which most readily facilitates circular motion over any other. The supposed rotation of the Earth is completely inconsequential and irrelevant to the pendulum's swing. If the alleged constant rotation of the Earth affected pendulums in any way, then there should be no need to manually start pendulums in motion. If Earth's diurnal rotation caused the 360-degree uniform rotation of pendulums, then there should not exist a stationary pendulum anywhere on Earth. It has been said that the pendulum experiment proves the rotation of the Earth. This is quite impossible, for one pendulum turns one way, and sometimes another pendulum turns in the opposite direction. Now we ask, does the Earth rotate in opposite directions at different places at one and the same time? We should like to know. Perhaps the experimenters will kindly enlighten us on this point.
There's all kinds of evidence for the phenomenon of what's called continental drift. This means that the continents are able to move as if they're floating on a fluid. Now, if the Earth is spherical, if it's spinning, anybody knows that if this is spinning very, very, very fast like that, that the continents should all be located at the equator, because centrifugal force would move the continents from the poles to the middle.
The Coriolis effect is often said to cause sinks and toilet bowls in the northern hemisphere to drain spinning in one direction, while in the southern hemisphere causing them to spin the opposite way, thus providing proof of the spinning ball Earth. Once again, however, just like Foucault's pendulums spinning either which way, sinks and toilets in the northern and southern hemisphere do not constantly spin in any one direction. Sinks and toilets in the very same household are often found to spin in opposite directions, depending entirely upon the shape of the basin and the angle of the water's entry, not the supposed rotation of the Earth. Jennifer Horton wrote, while the premise makes sense that the Earth's eastward spin would cause the water in a toilet bowl to spin as well, in reality the force and speed at which the water enters and leaves the receptacle is much too great to be influenced by something as minuscule as a single 360-degree turn over the span of a day. When all is said and done, the Coriolis effect plays no larger a role in toilet flushes than it does in the revolution of CDs in your stereo. The things that really determine the direction in which water leaves your toilet or sink are the shape of the bowl and the angle at which the liquid initially enters the bowl. The Coriolis effect is also said to affect bullet trajectories and weather patterns as well, supposedly causing most storms in the northern hemisphere to rotate counterclockwise and most storms in the southern hemisphere to rotate clockwise, to cause bullets from long-range guns to tend towards the right of the target in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Again, however, the same problems remain. Not every bullet and not every storm consistently displays the behavior and therefore cannot reasonably be used as proof of anything.
They got us to ridicule it, and that was the genius in their whole plan. If you ridicule something socially, it's ridiculous, so I'm not going to look into it. When if you're thinking about it, if you flip it inside out, to assume the earth is flat makes so much sense. To assume it's a globe is so ridiculous. We should have laughed at that, you know? And it's funny how people who still believe in the sphere always make fun of the flat earth, because they'll say, well, how can I stay on? I'll fall off. I mean, that's ridiculous. I'll fall off. Yet they have total faith in not tumbling down the sphere. For some reason, this appears safe to them. You know, it's like, no, wouldn't a level surface appear more sensible and safe if you really think about it?
People say, well, go look at the planets. The planets are spheres, so that means we're a sphere. No, whip out a telescope. I've got one. Whip out your telescope and look at Mars. It's a dot of light. It's an orange dot. And then when you look at a NASA image, it's this desert world with canyons and ice and craters and shit. But when you look at it through an amateur telescope, like a good amateur telescope, not one from fucking Walmart, like a good one, it's an orange dot. It's not a desert world with canyons and shit that they went to. There's no rover on Mars. They're prepping us with movies like The Martian so they can steal our money on a fake trip to Mars, just like they stole our money on a fake trip to the moon.
Behold, the mysterious floating orb. Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Soup's on.
You don't need all the complex theories and math. The sun isn't 93 million miles away. It's much closer, and much smaller. Oh, it's 400 times bigger than the moon, but it's also 400 times farther away, so it appears to be the same size. The sun and moon are the same size, and they're not as far as they say they are. They circle above the plane that we live on, the flat plane. They circle. The sun shines down like a spotlight. It's around 24 hours.
The same phenomenon Eratosthenes measured could be explained by a flat Earth if the sun were only a few thousand miles away and 32 miles across. The math would work out the same.
Once you realize what's going on, you're on a flat plane, you can see the sun. It's like it moves towards you, passes overhead, and moves away from you. It's perspective, the distance. It moves that direction until it reaches the vanishing point, the point of convergence on the horizon, where you can no longer see its light.
This is a really, really good video to watch. It's called The Amazing Flight of a Balloon to the Edge of Space. And if you watch it, you will see, because those are clouds there. This isn't the ocean. This is clouds. And what have we got here? That's a hot spot from the sun. Now, if the sun's 93 million miles away, yeah, but massive, how is it causing a heat spot on here? Well, this is a still from it. You can watch the video for yourself, but this is what it does. There's minutes and minutes of this video as it spins around, and you can see it again and again. It will blow your mind, because you'll see the sun isn't that far away at all, because it can't be causing a heat spot on the clouds if it's 93 million miles away. If it's massive, it should all be coming in at the same angle. There should be no...
The sun is obviously not 93 million miles away. It looks very close.
Circumnavigation is really just a flat circle path. Gravity as we know it simply doesn't exist.
The sailor thinks that he's traveling around the Earth this way, when in effect he's traveling around the Earth this way. And he's creating a circle. He's moving in a continuous direction around. He goes through the various parts of the circle, and he comes back where he started from. Swung around this way.
One of heliocentrists' favorite supposed proofs of their ball Earth theory is the ability for ships and planes to circumnavigate, to sail or fly at right angles to the North Pole, and eventually return to their original location. Since the North Pole and Antarctica are covered in ice and guarded no-fly zones, however, no ships or planes have ever been known to circumnavigate the Earth in north-south directions, only east-west. And herein lies the rub. East or westbound circumnavigation can just as easily be performed on a flat plane as it can on a globular sphere. Just as a compass can place its center point on a flat piece of paper and trace a circle either way around the pole, so can a ship or plane circumnavigate a flat Earth. The only kind of circumnavigation which could not happen on a flat Earth is north-south bound, which is likely the very reason for the heavily enforced flight restrictions. Flight restrictions originating from none other than the United Nations, the same United Nations which haughtily uses the flat Earth map as its official logo and flag. So the ball earther's logical argument is that only a globe can be circumnavigated, the Earth has been circumnavigated, and therefore the Earth is a globe. This is indeed a logical modus ponens statement, but the conclusion is rendered invalid because the first premise, that only a globe can be circumnavigated, is categorically false.
There is no curve, man. You went up on top of your house and saw the curvature. You went on a plane and saw the curve. No, you didn't. There is no curvature. You know how I know? I tried to debunk the flat Earth and I failed. That's how most of us get started. We try to debunk the flat Earth and we fail.
There's no evidence for curvature when you use your own senses and your own observations. Across Lake Michigan, from St. Joseph to Chicago, is 60 miles. Over 60 miles, anything under 2,400 feet should not be seen. This is a visual of how that works. See the blue, obviously the green line is you're straight out. As if you were looking straight out, obviously the Earth's supposed to curve, so the blue line is where it curves. Anything beyond the blue line should not be seen. Sears Tower is only 450 feet high. It's the highest, obviously, building in Chicago. It's giving you the heights of some of the rest of the buildings there. There's quite a famous picture, a guy called Joshua Nowicki, of Chicago from 60 miles away. We shouldn't be able to see any of it. It should be all behind 2,400 feet of curve. Yeah? Now, people say, but you can't see the bottom of the... You know, it's proven that the Earth's curved, because you can't see the bottom of it. But you can't see the bottom of it because seas and lakes, they wave. They go up and down. They're not completely... I mean, obviously, if it's completely flat and completely clear, then you'll see a lot more of it. But this actually proves that the picture wasn't taken from very high above sea level. If it was, you'd see a lot more of the buildings, like in this next one. From slightly closer, from only 37 miles away, and should be behind 900 feet of curve, I think we can see more than 500 feet of the Sears Tower there, but you can see virtually all of the skyline. Because obviously it's a clearer day, it's a little bit brighter, and obviously the waves aren't as choppy. Here's the opposite. There's 36 miles of waves in between. Why would we see the whole thing? But we can still see far more of it. It should be 840 feet a drop. We shouldn't be able to see... Oh, we should be able to see less than the top half of those. We move on to a different city, Toronto, across Lake Ontario. A place called Grimsby. Obviously not in Lincolnshire. 37 miles away, should be behind 900 feet of curve. The CN Tower is 1,800 feet tall. You should be able to see only the top half of that and hardly any of the rest of Toronto. Can we see pretty much the whole skyline there? Again, you can check this out for yourself. You can get half a dozen of these pictures from various places all around this bay. Yeah, this is actually taken from the red lines there. It's actually Grimsby's here. So it's actually a little bit further than this red line, but you can get pictures from Toronto from all over this beach. Yeah, and you can see way more of it than we should be. Now, people say, oh, well, that's light refracting, bending it round the curve. It doesn't look like a mirage. I've seen mirages. They're inverted or they're wavy. We know what a mirage looks like. We can see it in the distance. 81 miles away from Genoa. It's the Isle of Gorgona. It's only 70 feet above sea level. We shouldn't be able to see any, or we should be able to see the tip. We can see most of the island. It should be behind 4,300 feet of curve. It should have curved away by now. We can still see it. We'll bring it closer back home. The Isle of Man. from the file coast, 61 miles away. And again, we can't just see the tops of the turbines, we can see virtually all of them. From 61 miles away, Snæfell is 2,030 feet high, 2,034 feet high, so that's the highest point on the Isle of Man. 61 miles away should be 2,480 feet of curvature. Should be, you know, half a mile below the horizon. From London, 75 miles away. Starts getting interesting when you start getting towards the 100-mile mark. We're talking over a mile of dip now. This is the Isle of Oahu, taken from Kauai. Thank you. In Hawaii. It's 90 miles away. Again, you can see, you know, apart from, you know, whatever bit the waves are hiding, we can see a lot of that island. And here's the numbers for it. It should be behind 5,400 feet of drop. Its elevation is 4,003 feet, so we shouldn't even be able to see the tip of it. You can see nearly all of it. This is the Sierra Nevada range from Mount Diablo in California, San Francisco. It's 160 miles away. Yes, we're up a mountain. Yes, they're up a mountain. But we can see, again, a lot of the bottom of the mountains. You can see the snow-capped tops, and then we can see the rest of the mountains as well. 160 miles away, this should be behind 17,000 feet of curve. Again, yes, you might be able to see the top of it, but not all of the mountains. And here's the furthest one I've found so far. This is my record so far. I'm sure it'll keep on growing. This is the Reunion Island from the Isle of Mauritius. It's 149 miles away. It's a long, long, long way away. And once again, we can see the peak, but we can also see most of the rest down. This is quite clearly a very, very good observational day. Very clear, very calm. The highest peak on Reunion Island is 3,072 meters tall. It's just under 2 miles. 149 miles away, everything should be behind 2.8 miles of curvature. Should have curved way, way away. And again, it's not just the tops we can see much more. We can see a lot more, you know, 2,000 feet or so of that. We can see far more. That's what I'm saying about the Z-axis curve. It's not there. It's not there. If you watch a boat out to sea and then get a telescope on it, it'll come back into view again. Yeah, it's perspective, and it's obviously the limits of our eyesight, but it's also conditions as well, quite clearly. Yeah, heat, haze conditions, what have you. Visible conditions do check. But the point is that photographs have been taken. I've just shown you a dozen photographs from starting at 30 miles, 60 miles, 90 miles. Now we can see 150 miles in the distance, and it should well have disappeared behind the curve of the globe. Huge flat places on Earth, everybody's aware. If you ever watch Top Gear, the Bonneville Salt Flats, where everybody goes racing, but there's even bigger ones in South America. Ethiopia? But the Saladillo in Bolivia. They're going for 4,000 square. They go for hundreds of thousands of square miles. Big flat places on Earth. Yeah, famously flatter than a pancake. The evidence is all around us.
The Earth is flat, and that is that. Don't overthink this thing. It's not necessary.
Primary knowledge or secondary knowledge? You're going to use your own senses, your own observances, your own experiments, hopefully, or you're going to believe what you've been told just because that's what everybody believes.
It's not this overly covert, like, psyop. Like, what would be the point of that? To discredit the truth movement? If you look into Flat Earth for 3 hours, that you would realize that it's not a psyop. It's not a psyop. A psyop of that magnitude that would ultimately bring the truth movement to its... Do you really think the truth movement is going to be brought to its knees anytime soon, given all the information? The same as with Flat Earth. Think about it.
So why? What have they got to gain? You know, why bother? Well, as far as I'm concerned, once you've done research, and if you come to the same conclusion that myself and thousands of others have done, it overthrows heliocentrism, overthrows the Big Bang, it overthrows evolution, overthrows everything we thought we knew about the world.
And I've heard people say that the reason they don't want to publish papers that disagree with special relativity or general relativity is that they built their careers on this. If you were paranoid, you'd say there's a conspiracy. Whatever it is, there is a lot of resistance to getting something published that disagrees with either of Einstein's two theories.
As for all of the photos and video evidence we now have that the Earth is round, well, all of that material is completely fabricated. a hoax perpetrated by space agencies, airlines, globe manufacturers. They are reaping the rewards of our ignorant belief that the Earth is actually round.
Maybe I'm foolish, maybe I'm blind, thinking I can see through this and see what's behind. Got no way to prove it, so maybe I'm lying. But I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put your blame on me. Take a look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see it clearer, or are you deceived in what you believe? 'Cause I'm only human after all, and you're only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put your blame on me. Some people got the real problems. Some people out of love. Some people think I can solve them. Lord heavens above, I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. Don't ask my opinion, don't ask me to lie, and beg for forgiveness for making you cry. For making you cry. 'Cause I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. Oh, some people got the real problem. Some people out of love. Some people think I can solve them. Lord heavens above, I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. I'm only human, I made mistakes. I'm only human, it's all it takes to put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. 'Cause I'm no prophet or Messiah. You should go looking somewhere higher. I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. I'm only human, I do what I can. I'm just a man, I do what I can. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put your blame on me.
The earth is